This whole project started with his son, he mentioned, who lives in Burgos. In 2003, he and I and my old dear friend Matt Clark, who played the priest that gave me the rosary, the three of us were trying to do the Camino in 2 weeks. We didn't have a lot of time because I had to get back to LA that summer to begin the new season for the West Wing. So my sister, who lives in Madrid, suggested that we rent a car and drive it for future reference, and so we did. And we drove north to Burgos, the city where the little boy stole the bag. And we went to the refugio, and they were crowded, and a fellow suggested we go to this place called the it was a Caso Roao called El Molino. It's in the film. It's where the Dutchman is cooking our food. We stayed there that night, and we were invited to the Pilgrim Supper. And during the supper, the family was serving us, and their youngest daughter, this very beautiful young girl named Julia, came in, took a look at his son Taylor. Taylor took a look at her. They're still looking at each other. They're married, and they live in Burgos, and that's how the whole thing started. So Emilio realized that if he was ever going to see his son again, he had to start making trips to Spain, and while he was there, I suggested he consider the idea of doing a movie on the Camino. Bravo, bravo.
How, as an actor, do you trust both your instincts and the audience?
I trusted him. He said, no acting on this film. Just show up, listen to me, do what I tell you, everything will be fine.
Yeah, but I had to know when to get out of his way as well. I had to know that he was in the moment and to not step in, right? And he was so on the mark. There were a few times he wasn't, and I did have to step in. You know, he's a very gregarious guy, and he likes to shake everyone's hand, and he likes to jump into a crowd and take pictures with everyone. And so for me, I had to keep reminding my father that you're not that guy yet. You're not the guy shaking everybody's hand. You're not friendly. You're kind of a curmudgeon, and you have to remember that. And he'd say, oh, okay.
One day he said, would it make any sense to you if I told you that your character would never have voted for Jed Bartlett?
And hopefully what we tried to do in the film was to make sure that it never came off as preachy or anything other than human. And I think when you go to the Camino, when you spend time there, you realize that yes, of course, there's this Spanish cultural backdrop, which is undeniable, but it's so much bigger than that. I think there are as many non-believers as there are believers. There are people who are transitioning from a job or from a relationship or whatever it is. So I think they're all doing, you know, this. They're all making an effort to unite the will of the Spirit to the work of the flesh.
I mean, it's not just father-son this way, but it's, right, a grandfather story and a grandson story.
My father was Francisco Esteves. He was born in a little village called Pararubias in Salta Revolta, which is about 80 kilometers from Santiago. So yeah, it was a full circle coming back. I think what we tried to do with the film was what the Camino tries to do for nearly 1,000 years, and that is to invite all the guests who choose to make the journey for a transcendent experience. It doesn't force you to have it. It only allows it to happen if you are so inclined to take the journey. And that, I think, is what the main message of our film is. If you are so inclined to take this journey, take courage, enter. It's worth it. You know, Emilio's idea was for all of us to have our own private moment once we arrived at the destination. Nobody knew what the other ones were going to do. We didn't know that the big Dutchman was going to drop to his knees, which just still takes my breath away and brings people to tears. And we didn't know that Jimmy was going to weep openly, that he had a transcendent moment. And in his brokenness, he found something deeply personal. We were all alone in those moments.
We didn't know we would get access to the cathedral.
Oh yes, that was, you better explain that, yeah. We did not know until 48 hours before we arrived in Santiago that they would allow us to film in the cathedral. If we were not allowed to go into the cathedral, we had no movie, no matter what.
They
So-
had never allowed a feature film to be shot there before, and they get requests every year because, though this is maybe the first or the second film for American audiences about the Camino, there are many that are shot in Spain, and they always say no. So, you know.
They only allow news footage and occasional documentary, but never a feature film. They were very reticent, and Emilio literally ordered the cast and crew to begin to pray and make sacrifices to open that door when we got to Santiago. It's true. People experience a joy in that cathedral, and they're watching that huge incense device. It's called the butafamero, flying across the cathedral, pulled on the string. It is the most extraordinary thing. No one has ever seen that on film before. And it has an effect on people, and it is a deeply powerful thing, and I can't tell you why, but it's extremely joyful. And that has given me an immeasurable sense of gratitude and joy myself that I was a small part of what this kid did. We learned that making a film is one thing. Getting it seen is totally different. That's why we're here tonight. We're still on this journey.
Spread the word, people. Tell a friend. Reverend Scott.
I had a serendipitous lunch at a place in Seal Beach called Patty's. Happens to be right next door to the Salon Meritage in which the 8 murders occurred. In discussion with a couple of my friends, I found out that a week later, about 6 or 8 of the women whose friends were the stylists that were killed went to go see a movie, and none of the movies appealed to them except The Way. And it became an incredibly therapeutic experience for them. So, pure gift for them.
Just for my final comment, I want to thank Brian Oppenheimer so very much for making this possible.
Thank you, Brian.
You so much, Brian. Thank you.
I'm so thankful that Catholics and Media Associates has given us a chance. It's been a year of great independent films, faith-affirming films, films like Higher Ground, film like A Better Life, and to that we now add The Way. Small, powerful films that deserve a huge audience.
You know, you never know what you're going to expect when you walk into a crowd of people. You walk in and, well, I'm standing in the back of the theater and I'm sweating. And I never get comfortable. But what I do find is that I walk into a room of strangers and I leave a room full of friends. So thank you tonight for joining us and being my new friends. So thank you.
Reverend Scott, Father Eddie, Sister Rose, Vivian, Lillian, Mark Sheen, and Emilio Stevens, it's The Way.